We have also seen emerging market bonds of 44 billion fresh issuances, of course, with a different pricing. So we are seeing that every country, every industry is reacting in its own resilient and untemplated way. Uh, Shruti, can we have the next slide, please? And therefore, where Bangladesh stands in terms of this entire piece, reaction to COVID, is this is an economist survey which has just come out day before. So if you look at Bangladesh as an economy, it is rated ninth when we compare it to public debt as a percentage of GDP, a foreign debt percentage, the cost of borrowing, and reserve cost. So what we are looking at, a reserve cover of roughly 6.6 months of import, a foreign reserve percentage of GDP of about 10.15%, and external debt as a GDP percentage of 12.5%. Bangladesh has shown exceptional growth till last year at 8.1%, and even in these economic scenarios is expected to grow at around 2% as per IMF data. And overall, the manufacturing sector contributes about 18% of the total GDP. Can we have the next slide, please? So we come to the industry resilience sector, and we are very grateful that Mr. Shekhar Kaur and Mr. Sanjay Ghosh has agreed to attend and be speakers and give us an insight into what BSRM is doing in particular with COVID-19. And Mr. Kaur has been Group CFO since 2002 for Bangladesh Steel Rolling Mills. Mr. Sanjay Ghosh takes care of the entire supply chain for BSRM Group. And with this, I think we will just have our first poll question before we get into actual question answer. And the poll question is, how long do you think it will take your world to come to full function after COVID-19? So everyone can vote here in terms of what they think will be the lasting impact of this virus. And let's just give them a couple of minutes time so that we can see what is the expected impact, where the world thinks we will be after. Interesting numbers coming in here. So can we just show the results to everyone who has voted? Yeah. And can we start the session? Can we close this poll, please? Okay. So we have sort of a between 42% think that up to 6 months this impact will be there, and roughly 30% think that it will take about a year for the world to come back to normal. That means we need a lot of adaptation over the next 6 months to 1 year for everybody to survive and to see through the effects of this particular virus. Can we close this poll, please? So coming back to Mr. Kaur, at a sectoral level, from a finance perspective, what do you think is the steel sector impact in Bangladesh?
Thank you, Amina. Really, we are passing a very bad time. Now we all are stuck. However, we should treat, especially I should treat COVID-19 is the symbol of comma, not full stop. We consider Bangladesh is one of the strongest emerging steel markets in Asia. The demand for construction steel in Bangladesh has significantly increased on the back of economic boom. There are around 250 to 300 steel mills in Bangladesh with a total production capacity of around 8 million metric ton per annum. Big steel producers significantly increased their production capacity. 60% of total demand made by 6 to 7 big rolling mills. We are one of them. Yearly, there is a business of USD 6 billion in steel sector in Bangladesh. Per capita steel consumption is about 40 to 45 kg now, and we hope it will be 75 to 80 kg by 2022 if we can run in this pandemic situation. However, our production capacity was only 4 lakh in 2008, and now this is 16 lakh metric ton per year. So imagine the growth of steel industry in Bangladesh. At present, there are some mega projects are going on like Padma Bridge, Dhaka Metro Rail, Dhaka Chittagong Elevated Expressway, Dhaka Elevated Expressway, Paira Deep Seaport, four-lane expansion of major highways in Bangladesh, Rupur Nuclear Power Plant, Kornofuli Tunnel. These are the main projects where everywhere we are in the project. About 100 economic zones are in active consideration. So we feel the steel industry in Bangladesh looks to be strong, but during last 1.5 months, the COVID pandemic has significantly affecting the global economy. We are also affected. Last 1.5 months, most of the rolling mills running at their maximum 25 to 30% capacities, and delivery position also same. Some steel mills stopped their production. Now, gradually mills are going to start production. We had to close our all mills from April 10th, and again we have started our production. So, considering the effect of COVID-19, we think GDP growth will be slashed as predicted. However, we hope from June, Bangladesh will be able to start business again. Mind it, COVID-19 is the symbol of comma, not full stop. If we only consider fixed cost, total steel rolling mills in Bangladesh lost about 2,000 to 2,500 crore in last 1.5 months. About 10 lakh ton sales valuing 60 billion we lost. As all are stuck, receivable has no movements. As we opened LC before COVID-19, now goods are arriving, so inventory will pile up. If we cannot start producing in full swing, inventory will increase and receivable will also increase. Banks are our partners and friends. They are supporting us. Banks supported us in 2008 and they will do the same in this situation. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Kaur, for a whole roundabout entire view on the steel sector. Mr. Ghosh, how do you see the supply chain impact on steel sector in Bangladesh?
Thank you, Mr. Anindita. Actually, supply chain is now struggling all over the world. All our current practices now have to face a lot of challenge for sourcing, in terms of logistics, in terms of delivery. Everything got stuck. We cannot think about our as usual delivery terms or as usual thought process could survive in this process. Due to COVID-19, I feel next 6 months we have to adopt a new thought process to maintain the supply. Of course, our government has given a good support during this last 1.5 months. From day one, during lockdown period, our port, Chittagong port, is completely operational till date, and we could able to take delivery from port, and also all the goods movement are not so far restricted, so we could able to deliver to our major customers like different projects, different valuable government projects which are under working still now. Of course, we are in terms of global supply chain, with a lot of interruption was there from getting materials from China. You know, the China was initially affected during January, and we could not get the materials on time. And from that perspective, we have decided from January, we have decided to diversify our product and get and secure the materials from different area, different countries, instead of dependency on a particular country. So we have to immediately diversify the source so that we could able to make at least sufficient stock in hand. And we have to think continuously during this pandemic how to run our mill, how to feed our mill for raw materials, consumables, and also deliver to our customers. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ghosh. And is there any particular impact on inventory management you are seeing in Bangladesh today? Like, are the cycles getting longer from procurement to production, if procurement of raw materials is at all happening today?
Yes, actually, for the steel section, since we are making billets and we have no source in our country, we are completely import dependent, and it takes longer time, at least 2 months to 3 months time to get the materials. And for steel making, for billets, for billet makings, rolling mill, and to deliver to our warehouse to the customer, it takes at least 270 days to 360 days time for to cycle all these things. So due to this COVID-19, of course, we cannot run our production in full swing, and we have to pile up inventory to produce for future, because we don't know, even today also we don't know what will be the impact for next 2-3 months, because our major sources in US is of course our major sources for scraps. They are still struggling with COVID. Europe is still struggling. Japan is also now in emergency situation. We don't know what will happen. Australia, they are under threat. So all these major sources will be will be locked down anytime. So we may face shortage of our raw materials. So to assess this risk, we have made some extra raw materials in hand. So of course it will trigger some extra inventory and also extra cost.
Yeah, I think, thank you, Mr. Ghosh, because this epidemic has shown that you cannot predict anything right now. So the unpredictability part of the epidemic is something I think the world has not seen. Even in 2008, some bit of it was predictable, but with emerging situations today and with the supply source being all over the world, that becomes a bit difficult to predict. So coming to our next session, which is regulatory responses, we have a poll question coming in, which is: do you think the regulatory response has been commensurate with the crisis? The audience can vote for this, and we will give about 2 minutes for everybody to vote.
There is no response.
We are seeing some responses.
Yes, it is. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, we are just showing the results now. Again, about 60% people agree that the regulatory response should have been more, or it is, and 30% say that it is almost
Agreed.
right. Yeah, they agree that the response has been commensurate. So, regarding this, Mr. Kaur, how are you seeing, as from a financial perspective, the regulatory responses, especially around taxation, labor, any other thing that you think will help the company or the sector?
Regulatory support which we got from our government, cash reserve ratio I saw reduced to 4% from 5%. Repo rate reduced to 5.25% from 5 to 5.75%. Advanced deposit ratio increased to 87% from 85% for commercial banks. For other Islamic bank, ADA ratio is 92% now, which was 90%. Hence, about I think about 50,000 crore liquidity will be injected into banks for these facilities. Another facility is given by Bangladesh Bank. Use and sell repayment tenor increased to 360 days from 180 days. Further, in case of any default payment, no overdue to be shown till June 2020. And again, a big stimulus package and initiative of Bangladesh Bank is about 80,000 crore, that is about USD 10 billion. Out of 80,000 crore, 30,000 crore sanctioned for large scale industries and service sector, that is equivalent to USD 3.5 billion. This is for 3 years. For first year, interest rate would be 4.5%, and 4.5 for rest 4.5% will be provided by central bank to the commercial bank. And refinance from Bangladesh Bank is about 15,000 crore, that is USD 1.75 billion. This is the regulatory support from our central bank. As budget is coming, I hope rate of tax will be reduced. Plus, there will be no additional tax for the industry. This is our expectation from the government. If we get support from government, we think we should be able to start our rhythm again. And we have to start. We have to survive. In this COVID situation, we have to survive. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kaur. I think one of the complaints that I keep on hearing from some of the banks in Bangladesh is that the banks are being asked to do more without a lot of budgetary allocation. Do you think that's true today? Like banks has been asked to take a lion's share of support to the industry.
Yes, we can say. Bank is taking the lion's share, and they are too much supportive for the industry. They did in 2008, and they are doing same in this year.
Thank you. Any particular thing, Mr. Ghosh, from a supply chain perspective, or any new laws coming in which is helping in the supply chain part?
Actually, this is if you consider the supply chain, actually there is no law prevailing under this. Only we are following the government rules in terms of transportation, in terms of safety of our drivers, in terms of Chittagong Port Authority regulations. These are continuously changing. We are focusing on these issues every day. We are just following up. And for safety of the laborers in this transport section in the supply chain arena, it is, I think, in near future, it will be huge impact. It will increase little cost, of course, and we have to remain with this. And since cost in demand and supply situation, the overall impact on pricing and overall impact on cost of raw materials will not increase, so far my understanding, because due to slow demand in the market, of course slow supply disruption will be there, and also slow demand. So it will come under same umbrella or same balance, so that we cannot expect that in future price will increase, so it will impact our total overall industry. Since demand in Bangladesh, since demand is there, so far my understanding, so demand is there, so whenever we come into full operations, we could able to manage all these things.
I think one of the things that we actually see a lot in Bangladesh is the government sector demand. The mega projects going on, multiple mega projects where BSRM is one of the preferred suppliers. Do you expect in short term those to continue as it is, or are you expecting some sort of a lull before those mega projects are again restarted at full strength?
All the major mega projects, they are actually working still during this COVID-19. Padma Bridge, construction projects, they are still working. Even they have not shut down their activities. For the rail link projects, Rupur power plants, Rupur nuclear power plants, this is also working. And all the coal-based power plants, they are also working during this COVID-19 situation also. So I don't feel there will be any restrictions. There will be any demand shortage in future. They will still they are still continuing and purchase our raw materials, purchase our finished goods. So I don't feel there will be any disruption in demand supply situation.
Thank you, Mr. Ghosh. I think if you look at anything that BSRM is looking in terms of the labor scheme, or is that more a textile-driven schemes that we have seen in the market?
Actually, BSRM took the initiative once COVID-19 situation spread in worldwide. During January, we set our strategies how to make the all the supply chain stable, and how to keep safety of our employees, our laborers, at our industry, at our head office, everywhere. So we kept uh, developing our efficiency to keep our laborers and workers safe to work during this COVID-19 situation. I think we are very much ready to work under this situation. And also digitalization, it is also a great initiative from our managements, which has taken place 2-3 years back. All the purchase procurements, all the things, all the bills and everything can be we can perform our duties, even work under home. So no problems. It is a great relief for us
Yes.
for supply chain point of view.
Wow. So that seems like a perfectly working business continuity planning, which a lot of industries are struggling today.
Yes, that you can say that.
Thank you, Mr. Ghosh. I think now we are coming to our third stage, which is how people have adapted. And we have a poll question coming in right now. Uh, in terms of, I think it's an easy one, but it's always a difference. So, are you seeing diversification of the supply being strategically important? Uh, okay, I think this no is a difficult answer, but we'll still be interested. So we have about 90% of people effectively, or rather 91% right now, saying that yes, it is strategically important to diversify, and about 8% of people saying no, it is the same as earlier. Now, given the diversity of our audience in terms of both banks and corporates and supply chains and other being in place, I think it's something that is logical from this perspective. So we'll just show the results to the attendees and move to our next section, uh, which is actually a question for Mr. Ghosh. From a supply chain perspective, uh, you were telling about a lot of adaptations that you have done, and how the scrap supply sources, even if it is diversified across the world, is still there is a threat of lockdown across the world happening from the main sources. So in such a situation, are you expecting a decline in prices because the production capacities are working everywhere? And do you see a midterm or long-term midterm adjustment in terms of raw materials? The prices going down?
I don't think price will go down, because cost of uh, managing entire supply chain will increase. But if you consider the availability of the resource will definitely come down. But what I told earlier, the demand also is less, so that we cannot expect major jump due to supply chain disruptions. So it will remain, it will somehow balance with the demand side. Of course, there is a less availability of raw materials all over the world, and also demand side also there is a no rush. All the countries are now struggling to produce their maximum capacity. Demand is less. So now supply is also less and also demand is less. That's why I told earlier that there will not be major impact on pricing of raw materials. As well as I don't feel also there will be huge uh, impact on finished goods price, because of course there is some cost, additional cost for maintaining the supply chain at this moment. But since raw materials price will not go up, and I think we could manage, and people don't have enough money at this moment. That is also a issue. Supply of money will be less, so everybody is struggling. Everybody will keep the keep to maintain their business cities. So my feelings, of course, there will be no major impact on pricing in even very near future, at least.
And are you looking at some shift between indigenous and imported supplies, or given the raw materials, it always has to be imported because Bangladesh doesn't produce the raw materials?
Right. If anybody is not ready, what is going on in worldwide, of course they will suffer. If you need immediately anything, if you think about your family, if your family needs anything at this moment, suddenly you have to bear the additional cost. If any industry in our country, even any country in the world, they have planned for their future demand, and they could manage their raw materials, I don't feel they will face any major problems. But of course it depends on the supply chain efficiency, how they manage the supply chain.
Thank you. I think my next question is to Mr. Kaur. Uh, from a financing impact perspective, are you looking at the local cost and availability being a constraint right now, or the foreign cost and availability is a point of concern, uh, or rather a point of discussion?
Just to say, we used to get about 16 billion to 17 billion USD as remittance from abroad, about 18 to 20 billion from export earnings. So, because of COVID-19, remittance and export process will be less for next few months. So, dollar price may increase, dollar BDT. However, Central Bank is supporting to commercial banks by supplying foreign currency. In this month, April also, we received 1 billion USD from remitter. If you think about banking stability and cost, as banks liquidity will increase, having support from the central banks, I think most of the banks will be stable and will be able to support us. That's it.
Uh, okay. And are you looking at like the local currency becoming more important, because Bangladesh always is a local currency driven market? Roughly 98% of overall assets is in BDT. So
Mm.
do you think for the short term that is something that will become more important?
Local finance is important.
Uh, and do you see any sort of carrying cost of inventory and the inventory holding period, and therefore, you know, that becoming something material for the industry as a whole? Or
Depends on the future situation. Because we have opened LC before COVID-19, Goods are arriving in Bangladesh. We are taking in our factory. If we cannot start our production, if we cannot start our sales with full rhythm, inventory will pile up. So inventory carrying cost will increase. Then we have to pay more interest to banks, and we cannot increase the price of finished goods because raw materials price is not increased. We have to maintain the price to have the market, to maintain our share in the market. So based on the situation, we have to take decision. But if we cannot start production and sell, our carrying cost will increase. Not only our, everybody will bear the same. And this is
Okay.
for applicable for all types of industries.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Kaur. I think now we go into our last section, and again a poll question coming in, and after that we'll of course pick a lot of Q&A. So, what
Okay.
actions are you seeing banks taking in response to COVID-19? This is much more no change in behavior, increasing lines for business, increasing the cost of finance, or decreasing the cost of finance. I think we have okay. So we are seeing some pattern emerging here.
Sanjay, are you in the line?
Yes.
You can respond.
Uh,
The,
we are just seeing the poll result. Are you able to see it on the?
yes.
So very interesting. 15% is they are not seeing any change in behavior from banks. 10% they are saying that, or rather 15% increasing lines for business, and roughly 40% is increasing the cost of fund, and 30% decreasing the cost of finance. Is where the vote is. So I think let's move to our final chapter right now before the Q&A session. And this is how the results look like to everyone. And so,
I want to add just one line.
yeah,
Decreasing cost of finance due to interest rate has reduced from 11 or 12% to 9% from 1st April.
okay, okay. So
This
the
is a
regulator,
big benefit for the industry.
okay. So because of the government support, the local lending rates have come down, and therefore it has decreased.
Yes.
Thank you. I think on the future part, Mr. Kaur, we would just like to understand uh, how you prepare an industry with so much of fixed cost in factories, labor, and what are the innovative ways of coping up with a crisis like COVID-19, which seems like it will be there at least for 3 to 6 months as we speak.
Fixed cost is fixed. We cannot
Yeah,
change this.
yeah,
If we produce more, part-time fixed cost will be reduced.
yeah.
The fixed in the long run, fixed cost is variable. But this is very difficult. This is difficult, but have to identify trigger variables that will affect our revenue and cost. These triggers can then be applied to established scenarios so that cash flow, profit and loss, and balance sheet can be modeled. Contingency plan can be the drafted for changing outcomes such as cost reduction, cautious inventory planning, supply chain monitoring, etc. etc. This is our way out.
Thank you, Mr. Kaur. And given that BSRM is a thought leader, I think a lot of people will be listening to you and trying to articulate a few things into their own planning. Mr. Ghosh, anything on the supply chain side that you think needs to be done innovatively for the industry, or anything given that none of us have seen a crisis like this? Anything that you would like to highlight?
Yes, since Bangladesh has some specific demand, and that Mr. Shekhar Kaur already explained to you, Bangladesh has this very specific demand and growing demand in coming days also. And one thing, in steel industry is ready to support our big construction industries and construction projects in Bangladesh, and entire this construction projects supported by the local industries without importing from outside. And import tax is import tax is very high in Bangladesh. So we are not fighting with any international players. So all the demands in Bangladesh can be catered by the local steel industries. So this is a good chance for Bangladesh, all the steel industries in Bangladesh, to support our construction industries and government projects. And if all the projects are can be continued, so local steel industry don't need to feel any anxiety for future demand. And of course, for the supply chain perspective, COVID-19 has given us a great lesson that all the industry who are working under digital environment and who are very prompt in decision makings, and who are prompt in execute the orders and execute the decisions, they will survive in futures. So it is now time to change our supply chain, entire supply chain, to match with these difficult situations. That's all.
Thank you, Mr. Ghosh. It seems like we have to change our thought process a lot to be very nimble and I think focused on small things and digitization, as you rightly said, to make it less physical in nature, the entire, the process, at least the process, if not the products per se. I think we move to our final session, a section which is Q&A, and I think we'll pick up the first question from Mr. Kausar Alam. And one of the question is, oil price will significantly help to control cost and in turn price. What is your comment? Mr. Kaur, I think this question.
First question, what will be the supply chain?
No,
situation?
Mr. Kausar, oil price dependent will significantly help to control cost and in turn price. What is your comment?
If we get the benefit of oil price, then our cost will be minimized. Otherwise not, because we have fixed contract with the foreigners. So we need to revise our contract, and if we get the benefit of oil price present world, then we shall be able to minimize our price. Otherwise not.
I think there's a question from Mr. Shah Ali. What will be the supply chain situation during COVID-19 pandemic in our country as well as South Asia? Would Mr. Ghosh like to take it? The first question.
Yes, I already explained the supply chain issues. Actually, different country is managing a supply chain in a different manner. In India, especially, they are struggling with a lot of issues in terms of supply chain, because from the day one, due to lockdown conditions, all the ports have been closed in India, and if some ports are open, but transport and movement is restricted. So I think they're facing a lot of problems. Last 1 and 2 months, we have been very close touch with all the suppliers. They have been facing a lot of issues. Anyhow, they are managing their supply chain by their own way. If you consider in Australia, if you consider in China, everybody is managing their own supply chain, because to maintaining supply chain is a big challenge during this COVID-19. Of course, in Bangladesh, situation is little bit comfortable due to government decision, because government, from the very beginning, government allowed all the goods transport open to move for the movement of the products. So if you visit to any markets, you will get the products. Of course, shops are closed, but there is no restrictions. If the shop open tomorrow, you will get all the things at your shops. So my feelings is depends on the government decisions. It depends on the situation of the COVID-19, how they act, how government will act, and all the supply chain related to supply chain professional acts with the government decision. It is the major issues.
Thank you, Mr. Ghosh. I think, Mr. Kaur, one question from you, slightly a bigger issue, is that if the pandemic contains the GDP growth for long term in Bangladesh, do you think the industry will suffer from extra capacity, which may result in shutdown of factories who are not very strong? This question is from Mr. Shantanu Bhomik, I think.
It depends. If we cannot start our production and sale, obviously we should suffer, and everybody will suffer. And GDP growth, our growth rate was 7.8 predicted rate, and it will come down to 4 to 5.
I think that's how it always starts, the consumption demand not being there and therefore impacting the balance sheet at a fixed price level.
Yes,
So I think that's broadly it from our end. We can see a lot of questions, but I guess we have just run out of time, and I think Mr. Kaur has to go somewhere. So I think thank you so much, Mr. Kaur. Thank you so much, Mr. Ghosh, for giving.
Thank you everybody, Mr. Santanu, Mr. Musharif.
Thank you so much. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Ms. Anindita.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.